Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. I am Cosmic, and today we're going to be doing a toe-to-toe comparison of Overwatch versus Battleborn in a video I have aptly titled Battleborn versus Overwatch, Dawn of the Hero Shooters. Now, some say that the two cannot be compared because of their differences, and I do agree that they are both trying to provide very different experiences. However, they also share many similarities and both fall into the hero shooter genre. And ultimately, it comes down to this. Two AAA games are releasing the same month that have very similar purposes. The penultimate purpose of this video is to help consumers who are in the majority and who can only budget for one, essentially, who can only buy one this month. So it's help them decide on which one would be more beneficial to them so they don't have to waste their money. And after all, who doesn't want to see these two go toe-to-toe? So I will compare both games in different categories, including graphics, sound, mechanics, content, progression and story. But before anything else, let's first introduce our contenders. So first over to Battleborn. Battleborn was developed by Gearbox, the creators of the Borderlands franchise, and published by 2K Games. The game is Gearbox's first new IP since the original Borderlands game and incorporates MOBA-style elements into its design. Overwatch, on the other hand, was developed and published by Blizzard Entertainment. Similar to Battleborn, Overwatch is also Blizzard's first new IP in several years that isn't linked to Warcraft, Starcraft or Diablo in some form. Unlike the MOBA-inspired Battleborn, Overwatch's inspirations lie deeply rooted in the FPS genre, taking cues from games such as Team Fortress 2 and old Quake mods. So let's start off with graphics. Both games share a vibrant cartoon graphical style while being quite distinctive at the same time. Overwatch has Pixar animation quality about it, with subtler colour tones in play. Everything from the level textures to the animations is top notch in Overwatch, which comes with the kind of polish only Blizzard can provide. Everything about Overwatch visually is clean and polished. It's one of the best looking games and has an art design that will endure for a long time to come. Visually, Overwatch's characters clearly had a lot of thought put into them. Each character looks and feels iconic, which is a tough feat given that the roster is so large. Battleborn, on the other hand, shares a cartoon aesthetic more akin to its lineage, Gearbox's previous Borderlands games. The vibrant, strong colours stand out, however it causes the game to be basically problematically messy, with things getting too busy and almost like a visual vomit on the screen. It seems Gearbox went too overboard, which can cause legitimate problems seeing what the hell is going on in the middle of a battle. When you're surrounded by creeps, players and AoE spells, things look a mess. Battleborn's characters do have a few standout gems, however much of the roster doesn't seem that memorable and some characters are visually very similar to others. Ultimately, graphically, I feel that Overwatch wins with its highly polished design and solid frame rate. Everything about the game visually is smooth and complementary to everything else. The game's characters are all memorable, and the game doesn't suffer the messy visual vomit that can occur in Battleborn. Next up is sound. Now, musical scores are always important in any video game, but especially in multiplayer games that are played repeatedly. Battleborn's musical score is nothing particularly to write home about. It is a nice score, but lacks any sense of real presence, which in turn doesn't really hit the emotional chords, especially in the middle of gameplay. Where Battleborn does shine audibly is in its sound effects and voice work. The voice work in Battleborn is sublime, pretty much for every character. The dialogue is well written, but the inflections and timing of the voice work make all the difference. Overwatch, on the other hand, has less voice work, but hugely memorable musical score. The music is varied and contains moments that help what's going on in the game to make you feel both epic and pressured as the clock counts down. The voice work is pretty good, bar a few characters. The accents just sound strange and out of place from what they pretty much should be. I have to say, for sound, I have to give it to Overwatch simply for the musical score. It was a close one, however, as Battleborn's voice work is utterly superb, and it could have gone either way. However, a game's musical score is a big component to engagement and enjoyment, even if it's subtle. And while the voice work of Battleborn is fantastic, it ultimately will become repetitive. Now let's get on to the meat. So we're going to first start with FPS mechanics. Now Overwatch takes its mechanical inspiration from classic shooters such as Team Fortress 2, Quake and Counter-Strike. Overwatch is designed to be a team-based shooter and nothing else. It's a project that had a clear and focused design goal. Overwatch is a fast-paced shooter that combines elements of classic shooter mechanics such as the movement and verticality with hero abilities. One of the major advantages Overwatch has over Battleborn is in its movement and especially in its verticality. Overwatch has characters like Widowmaker that can climb up nearly anything, and Pharah, who can pretty much go anywhere on the map, high or low. This verticality and constant movement gives a sense of openness to the maps that are not strictly speaking huge. While the basic principles of Overwatch are simple, the depth comes in the form of the characters, their respective playstyles, and the ability to change character mid-match. Each character has its own character counter, so that teams can shift their tactics according to the objective and situation. This mechanic alone is one of Overwatch's greatest assets and allows for some really great game-changing moments and nail-biting comebacks. Battleborn, on the other hand, shares its mechanical inspiration from a separate pool of games. Battleborn shares common traits with Gearbox's previous FPS title Borderlands, but it also takes heavy inspiration from MOBAs like Dota 2 and Smite. While this in an overall context makes for a great combination, in pure FPS scope it makes Battleborn's limited when compared to Overwatch's pure FPS focus. Battleborn lacks the movement and verticality of Overwatch, and while some of Battleborn's characters do have these traits, it's not to the extent of Overwatch. Where Battleborn does shine is that it's more complex than Overwatch's simplistic streamlined design. Battleborn has much more going on in any given mode. Not only are there more objectives and things to think about such as creeps, but due to the helix progression system of the characters, each character can be modified in different ways, giving much more depth to each character. Ultimately, in terms of pure FPS mechanics, Overwatch wins hands down. As a shooter, it's truer to the core. Its movement, verticality and pace far surpass that of Battleborn's. While Battleborn has the advantage of being more complex at a statistical level, Overwatch's execution of the core mechanics is cleaner and penultimately is a better FPS when compared as just an FPS. Content. The amount of content is a major factor, especially for people looking to get the most for their money. It's not just about the quantity of the content, however, the quality of the content matters just as much. Battleborn straight off the bat has more content containing both PvE and PvP modes. Each of the 3 PvP modes contain 2 maps, and each mode offers something different, from the classic MOBA style matches of incursion mode to the humour filled minion sacrificing meltdown mode. The story content mode is packed full of Gearbox's well-written humorous dialogue. Battleborn has a lot of content to offer, more than most multiplayer-focused games. Usually when games try to pack in a lot of content, the overall quality suffers, and while Battleborn does have its issues, the overall quality of the content really has not suffered. Overwatch's content consists of a few chosen objective-focused multiplayer modes. While its quantity can by no means match that of Battleborn's, the quality is of a supremely high standard. There is also the argument that many players who play multiplayer-focused games only ever enjoy 2 or maybe 3 modes, and they often play 1 or 2 modes over and over, so they don't need tons and tons of different varied content. Now this is a valid argument, and what Overwatch offers is perfect for those looking for a very focused, solid team-based shooter. For content, I have to give it to Battleborn, however. Not only does it have more content, but all of its content is of a high quality. Is it the same level of polish as Overwatch is? No. However, it does make up for what it lacks in polish with content variety. In terms of progression, both games share cosmetic progression as well as a player rank system. Blizzard have opted for a sheer cosmetic approach to progression, allowing players to rank up and unlock boxes that contain all manner of cosmetic items for characters, including new skins, spray tags, voice lines and poses. The quality of some of the skins in particular is far superior to that of Battleborn's cosmetic progression, which is very limited currently to basically colour changes only. Progression, however, runs through Battleborn nearly at every turn. Players can rank up and complete challenges to unlock heroes, cosmetics, and even lore about their favourite characters. Battleborn also has actual player progression in matches, in a Dota-like style with the Helix system. This allows players to modify hero abilities and morph playstyles. To this extent, Battleborn's progression has a certain depth to it that Overwatch's does not, and while in terms of sheer cosmetics, Overwatch is better, the fact that Battleborn contains the Helix system is the sole reason why Battleborn wins in the progression category. Now it's on to story. Now story is something that some gamers like myself care about and others don't, and it can be a very subjective thing. Now Overwatch is set in near future Earth after a global crisis from an artificial intelligence. A task force known as Overwatch was created to fight this threat and now became the world peacekeeping force after the crisis was averted. A conspiracy led the Overwatch headquarters to being destroyed, and the group disbanded as the UN wrote into law that any Overwatch activity was now unlawful. A second Omnic crisis breaks out in the world after being attacked by Reaper. Winston then reactivates the Overwatch team to save the world once again. Now, I really enjoy Overwatch's lore, world and characters. I think it is very, very well written. The futuristic Earth is something that is a ton of fun, but it also has a certain sincerity about it that resonates with a lot of people. Battleborn goes to the opposite end of the spectrum, being set in a full-blown, over-the-top sci-fi fantasy universe set in a distant star system. A species known as the Virelsi have destroyed most of the galaxy, forcing all the other species to flee to Solus, the last star system. These species are split into different factions, however they are forced to unite against their common foe. Now each faction sends their best fighters against the Virelsi, and these warriors are essentially known as the Battleborn. Gearbox have went heavy on the story and world building in Battleborn, which is something that Gearbox are picking up a knack for. Now both games have great settings and stories, however massively vary in one major way. Overwatch's story is contained outside the game. It's to be told in videos, books and comics and more. While there are subtle hints of the story in the game, it is kept very separate. Battleborn has all of its story in the game via story mission content, and you can experience it from start to finish with friends or solo. While both games contain great stories, characters and writing, for me, Battleborn takes the category just for the fact that the story is in the actual game and I can experience it, I can play through it. So for my $60, I actually get the story and don't have to spend time reading up about it afterwards. So now the categories are wound up, we have a 3-for-3 tie. So ultimately it comes down to this. Which game is going to be the best for you? Well, that depends on what kind of experience you're looking for. If you are looking for an old school team-based shooter, if you like Team Fortress 2, that kind of thing, then Overwatch is definitely for you. Me personally, I think Overwatch is the better executed game. I think it has more polish. However, my personal preference is Battleborn. I enjoy Battleborn more, I enjoy the mechanics of Battleborn more, and I enjoy the MOBA-infused elements of that game. However, the video does need a winner, and I am going to give it to Overwatch simply for the fact that it is so well executed. Blizzard have just put so much polish into that game that it just runs like a treat. It is well made, the level design, the character design, the mechanical aspect of the game is just so well put together. I do love Battleborn, and Battleborn is my personal preference. However, technically it just is not as good as Overwatch. It has technical problems, it runs poorly, it has issues with its level design. In particular, one map has a fatal flaw in it, and I just think that overall, in terms of an overall package, Overwatch is a well executed package that if you're looking for a multiplayer FPS, then that is your go-to game. Please do remember that these games are very, very different. The only reason that I am comparing the two is that they share similarities. They're both first-person shooters and they're coming out in the same month, and ultimately I think Battleborn has done a disservice to itself in its marketing because it marketed itself very similar to Overwatch when it wasn't at all. The reason for this is, like I say, for the consumers to choose which game they want to buy this month, and ultimately I hope that that is helped in some way. So before I get a load of angry comments saying, oh, you can't compare the two, well, I just did. Enjoy, and I'll see you next time.